And we're all over the world, which is amazing. And if you don't know, when you travel, if you're traveling this summer, keep in mind the chapters that you see on this map, and you can look them up on our website as well. And know that you're always welcome to show up to any city with any Creative Mornings. And they're always free no matter where you go. So it's a really cool way to get to know the community you're visiting, even if just for one day. So they're always held on Fridays, keep that in mind, but it's not always the last Friday of the month for different cities. So definitely something to look into if you're traveling this summer. And then we of course have our manifesto, which I used to make someone read, but I don't think that's as popular as I think it is. But it's a beautiful, as you know, I'm a big fan of Creative Mornings, of course, and it's just a beautiful kind of summary of what we stand for, that everyone is creative and everyone is welcome. So this month, we're going to be talking about survival. As you know, it was a challenging one to really find a suitable speaker for. We weren't sure how creative we were going to look for this kind of approach, or were we going to go for someone who's an artist that might have survived something tragic, but then we stumbled upon Refugee 613, and we thought, of course, how relevant within the time, within this year, and of course all the things that are happening around the world. This, on the 20th, was World Refugee Day as well, so very timely, and a very interesting topic for us, a little bit different than we usually do. Maybe a little bit heavier. We'll see how Louisa takes it today. I'm not going to set anything up for you, but just to give you an idea of the description we set up for this month. So our creativity will be empowered by the humbling stories of survival, and how sometimes depends not only on our resilience, but our own ability to summon strength in the face of overwhelming odds. Sometimes it depends on other people opening a door, building a bridge, or throwing a rope. So that's a beautiful idea, and I think Louisa will dive into that deeper, especially the idea of reaching out, how you can make an impact on different people's lives. And lastly, if you're interested in sharing your morning, we're of course Twitter, Instagram, these are our hashtags and handles. What's really cool about this is if you use the Creative Mornings survival handle, you check that out on, or hashtag, you check that out on Twitter, you can see the other conversations that are happening around the world today. There's a lot of other talks happening, and you can engage with those, see what talks they're doing and different conversations they're having. So it's a really interesting little peek into the Creative Mornings around the world. So with no further ado, I'd like to introduce Louisa to the stage. Just that once after she finished sending this text out.
That's an old picture. I don't have any pictures of myself, so I wasn't very useful for this. I'm just going to say one thing while we get the presentation up. I met someone this week who would have been perfect for this, way better than me, because she is actually a refugee who has survived something very good, that really rocks you to your core, the thought of having to flee your home for your personal safety. She's a poet from Burundi, and she's now living here in Ottawa, and her name is Ketty, K-E-T-T-Y. And I see some people nodding their head, maybe the Nobel Women folks. Yes. Google her. Google Ketty Ottawa. I'm going to mangle her name because I think it's Ethiopian. And she's amazing. Oh, here we are. Yeah, I got it right. Ketty Nimshandi. Find her on Twitter. Go to her blog. Look at the post that she put up on World Refugee Day. It was a repost from something she wrote last year about what it's like to leave your home. It is prose, but it is poetry. It is very moving, and I urge you to check it out and maybe get Ketty in here on another topic because she is eloquent and inspiring. Okay, so survival. I am going to be a bit of a downer. I'm really sorry, but I am to get you out on this rainy Friday morning, but at least we all made it to the end of the week. That's great. Weekend's coming. So first of all, thank you, Creative Mornings, for this invitation. I guess I can move this. I always said to myself I was going to make it to Creative Mornings. I love the idea of this, and I never quite have until today. So that's pretty exciting for me. I'd also like to say my thanks to the people of the Algonquin Nations. We are, as you all know, standing here on unceded territory of the Algonquin, And they gave the first welcome to strangers from afar. And we also want to acknowledge that. So I've had a pretty charmed life, and I've never really faced any life and death survival moments. So on the one hand, I felt deeply unqualified to speak on this topic. But for the past year and a half, I've been working with and for a lot of people who have faced those challenges. And I'd love to just share a bit about what I've learned. And some of it's going to sound, I was reviewing my presentation as thinking, man, it's a bit angry. But it's more that I want to draw our attention to the role that we play in the survival of others, sometimes on a daily basis, sometimes at pivotal moments in our lives, and how we can do a better job of it. So, Refugee 613, and you're going to learn more about it as we go, but let's just start really with the most important thing. What is a refugee? I'm sorry, guys, I thought the screen was going to be bigger. Can you read that at the back? So this is a sort of a generalized definition. My lawyer friends in the room, my refugee advocacy experts will say, yeah, but there's this, this, and this. This is the one that I like to use because it pretty much sums it up. A person who has to leave his or her home country due to war, persecution, or natural disaster. Do you notice there's nothing in there about income level? There's nothing in there about education. You can be a wealthy refugee, or you can be a poor refugee. The fact is you're a refugee because you can't stay in your home. It's no longer safe for you. So that's what happens all the time around the world. In fact, there are more than 65 million people displaced worldwide. So displaced means they are out of their home. They may still be in their country, or they may be in another country. They are not able to stay home. If you are a refugee, it means you have actually had to leave your home country. You've crossed the border to another country. So there are more than 21 million refugees worldwide. More than 5 million of them are from Syria. So that's why Syria has grabbed our attention, even though there are massive refugee populations from Afghanistan, Iraq, Pakistan, Congo, increasingly Burundi, Eritrea, parts of Latin America, etc. But the one that really grabbed our attention in 2015 was, in fact, Syria. So those folks can go back now, and their future is bleak. Some of them are living in refugee camps. Some of them are making very dangerous crossings of the Mediterranean, trying to get to Europe and maybe eventually to North America. So when they make these risky crossings, it's not because they think it's going to be an easy ride. They know the risk. And they're making these choices because it's better than staying where they are. Quite often for refugees, the host country is allowing you to be on their soil, but it may be very hard to work. It may be very hard to get health care. You may be persecuted. It may be that your kids can't go to school. So just because you're a refugee and you're hosted in another country doesn't mean everything's solved. So when people make these risky crossings, they're making one choice for their own survival. They may remain in a refugee camp, and it may be literally a camp, the thing you have in your mind, that you rent tents, or it may be that they are scraping together money to rent a tiny room in a big urban center. There's a whole range of refugee living conditions now. But in both cases, they're stuck. And they're either waiting to go home, hoping that the conflict will ease, hoping that their safety will be returned, or they have to look to the future and somewhere else to go. And that's the people who make this crossing into the Mediterranean are gambling with their lives that it's going to be better over the ocean than where they are now. So quite literally, they need a helping hand. Because if we as Western nations open the door to them and allow them to get on a plane or a boat and come to Europe or come to Canada without visas, then they would not be crowding into dinghies and making these terribly dangerous crossings. The fact is, we don't. We close our doors, and they're forced to make these dangerous choices. So there was we were interviewing a private sponsor of refugees recently about her motivation, why she stepped up to help refugees, and she said she was sort of watching and, like everybody, seeing the crisis unfolding, the global refugee crisis, was filling our screens, and she felt, well, what can I do sitting here in suburban Ottawa? And then she watched a Rick Mercer rant on refugees. And I did want to play it for you, but I couldn't get the damn thing to embed. So I'm going to just sum up Rick. I'm not going to walk down the alley. But his point was, if you see someone in the water, you don't ask if they're going to be, is he really drowning? Does he really need the help? Do we have what it takes to help him? You throw the rope. And so he just sort of said, throw the rope, people. And so that's why the sponsor decided to get involved. She decided to throw the rope. And so you're going to hear that phrase from me a lot, because whether you say throw the rope, whether it's open the door, whether it's extend a hand to help someone, that's the power that we have here in the West, where we're comfortable and we don't face any the same issues, about personal safety. It's a choice for some, and it's an imperative for others. Some people feel more strongly that this is something we have to do, because it's the human thing to do. So that's where I find this question of survival becomes interesting, because a lot of the time I think we tend to think of survival as something that we achieve on our own. And this experience has taught me that we don't achieve it on our own a lot of the time. We can be stuck in limbo, we can be in a life or death situation, and we need others. We need to recognize that we are all together, and we need to reach out that helping hand. So sometimes we just need to throw the rope. And you'll find ways to throw the rope, as we have in Canada and other countries, that are reasonable and safe and don't endanger your own life. I'm speaking here specifically to security screening, etc. I was just in the US for 3 weeks, meeting counterparts in refugee resettlement, and it's just a whole other world, and the focus is on assuming that everybody, all of these guys want to harm us or them in the US. That's the perception for so many people, except for the people working in refugee resettlement who are amazing and doing incredible work. But you know what? You throw the rope and you keep doing it over and over again, because we figured out that most of the time, most refugees are the victims of violence. They are not the perpetrators. I had the fun experience of being on The Daily Show just over a year ago. They came to Ottawa to interview the Prime Minister, and they wanted to speak to people working in refugee resettlement, so we gathered 5 people in. They interviewed us, and it was, I say fun, because we had to do the straight face to the completely nuts reporter. There's an actor called Hassan Minhaj, and he was very fun. And his lines, he was channeling a Trump figure, and he kept saying, why are you going to let these terrorists in? They're going to come in and they're going to kill you, etc. And it was all on our part improv. We just had to riff off what he was saying. And I said, so this was before Trump was elected. I said, well, are we going to not admit 40,000 refugees because one might be violent? I said that makes no sense. We don't blame all refugees for the one who resorts to violence, just like we don't blame all Americans for Trump. And that clip got new life around inauguration time. I couldn't figure out why people on my Facebook feed were like, oh my God, I didn't see this, I didn't see it on The Daily Show. I was like, what? I guess the Trump piece in particular inspired The Daily Show to play it again. So Canada threw the rope. In December 2015, from December 2015 through into 2016, we decided as a country that we were going to do this. And there's lots of stuff to talk about how we ended up in that place, but I think the most important thing to say is that we have been throwing the rope for almost the entire time we've been a country. Think of Ukrainians, Mennonites, Italians post-war, the Bulgarians, the Vietnamese, the Somalis, the Kosovars. We do it over and over and over. And sometimes we forget that. Sometimes we think that it's different every time. But it's really interesting writing about how the same things you hear being said now about refugees were said about previous waves of refugees, about the security issues, about how will they integrate, will they succeed, what about language? We say it every single time, and somehow we keep going and we continue to welcome people and we continue to build our country. Canada resettles refugees in two ways. Again, I'm oversimplifying. But government-assisted refugees, the government takes a referral from UNHCR and arranges for nonprofit organizations called settlement agencies to receive them at the airport and give them settlement services, help with housing, a job, register their kids in school, English language classes, etc. Then there's also private sponsorship of refugees. Canada is an innovator here. We created this program around the time of the Vietnamese influx, and we used it to such success with the Syrians that now the rest of the world is taking notice and are starting to build their own private sponsorship models. And I'm very proud that our government is actually investing time and money in showing people how it's done. And there are different models, but essentially a group of Canadians can come together and fundraise and take on the financial and practical responsibility of helping a refugee individual or family settle. So what can you do? What can you do to help in this situation? For almost all refugees, regardless of category, they need help once they arrive. There's the idea that they need help getting here. Sponsorship helps with that. Sponsorship helps with getting people here. But then once they arrive, there are all kinds of barriers to their full participation here. Number one is the experience that they've had. And there's something, I had a really wonderful experience talking to and listening to a woman who's a former refugee from Somalia, and she said, you know, as much as Canadians want to help, they have to remember you can never heal somebody's trauma from the refugee experience. And by that I don't mean they'll never get over it. I mean, that's something for them to do. You can't take away the pain of what they experienced. But what you can do is make other things easier and make it easier for them to go through that healing process. And so there are so many ways to step up, and I'm going to show you a few of them here. And these photos, by the way, are from a project that we are launching next Wednesday. It's a special website called Community, and it has gathered stories and photos and video to kind of tell the story of how Ottawa resettled refugees. So when you want to talk about creativity and survival, the goal of this website is not just to sort of chronicle what we achieved as a community and to acknowledge and affirm that it was a really powerful and important thing to do. It's to encourage people to keep doing it. It's to sustain that effort and to understand that welcoming refugees is something we've done since the very beginning, and it's something that takes effort and it takes community support, and we want that to continue. We want that engagement, that momentum to continue. So this is a pair of private sponsors. That's the lady who watched the Mercer Rant. So private sponsors, settlement workers, professionals who do the frontline work of helping people integrate and find them all the practical things. Health workers. This is Paula Day. She works for the Somerset West Community Health Center. There's Tess. Tess works with Paula. Paula works in the Ottawa Newcomer Health Center, which specializes in helping refugees. And she was one of the people who was in the hotels when the Syrians arrived and getting them primary care right away, because guess what? They arrived in Canada in January and February, and they were sick. They got colds and flu right off the bat. Welcome to Canada! Woo. This is Irene Cameron. She's the principal of Carson Grove School, which had about 200 students, most of them newcomers. Over the course of 3 months, she got 150 Syrian kids. And she, working with multicultural liaison officers from OCISO, and multicultural liaison officers are settlement workers who are embedded in schools, and they help kind of provide a bridge between the families in the school setting and settlement services, under the idea that if the children thrive, the family will thrive. Sorry, the other way around. If the family thrives, the children will thrive in school. Irene is an incredible leader, the daughter of Ukrainian refugees. And she has just made Carson Grove this warm, super welcoming place that it's one of those things I'm just so proud that our city even has a school like this and has an Irene camera. Okay, so here's some kind of maybe ways you weren't thinking that you could contribute, or you didn't know that. Ahmed is the Vice President of the Ottawa Muslim Association, and he's also a private sponsor, but mostly he mobilized his faith community. The Muslim community in Ottawa was incredibly dynamic and supportive and helpful with the Syrians, and they drove, they cooked, they welcomed, they took people to learn how to shop. They just did so much. Allison is a lawyer who's part of a group called the Refugee Hub Sponsorship Support Program, and they provided pro bono support for people filling out sponsorship applications. So we have the Boys and Girls Club, we have a federal civil servant who is part of the settlement effort, we have a city staffer who works for the recreation, From works for City Rec, and he signed up 50 Syrians for swimming lessons and all kinds of other things. We have Tony, a pharmacist, who made sure that the refugees got the medication they needed quickly and with Arabic translation. We have Allison, who's an English language instructor, and we have Bruce. If you're a fan of the Add Issues panel on CBC, you'll recognize Bruce Anderson. He's there as a donor. He gave money. So important. People often underplay, I don't want to just give money. It's what giving money enables so many people to do so many other things. Do not underestimate the power of giving money, and you don't have to give it Bruce Anderson levels. You can give it your level. And then there's me. How did a couple people already have asked me today how I got into this. The short version is I'm a journalist. I was in newspapers for 25 years. And then I left newspapers because that's a whole other story. The model is broken, as they say. And I knew that I wanted to do more, and I'd come to the limit for me of being the chronicler of action and wanting to actually be someone who does themselves. And so I left the newspaper and I was consulting and I was trying to make peace with the freelance life, which was very hard. The ups and downs, the feast and famine were really hard to take. I also missed being on a team. And right around about a year and a half into that, the Syrian crisis happened and Alan Kurdi died. Hands up if you know who Alan Kurdi was. Yeah, he was the little boy whose body washed up on the beach after his family decided to get in a dinghy to cross the Mediterranean. Thousands of little boys and girls have died before him, and hundreds have died since. The difference was that the picture was very poignant, and for Canadians, we found out almost immediately that he could have been here if we had opened our doors. His aunt in BC was trying to sponsor the family to come to Canada. The process was cumbersome. She didn't quite know how to do it, and she made some efforts that were kind of stymied, and as a result, his parents lost hope. I couldn't find somebody else who was herding the cats, basically, who was going to pull people together. I started talking to a lot of people, and if a lot of people were in the same position I was, I want to help someone else who's going to do it. And so sort of quite quickly a small group coalesced and created this hub that would help people talk to each other, would help people problem solve, would help people understand where they can go, where do I donate, where do I volunteer, what's needed. We became an information hub to do that. So that's been my contribution, and it went from being an all-consuming volunteer gig for 2 months, we moved very, very fast, to getting funding, and now it's been my full-time job since late 2015. And so I joke that my way of helping is to herd the cats, help the cats talk to each other, and then tell other people what the cats are doing. And since we're a creative group this morning, I don't know if anybody recognizes this team. This is the team from Crafted Stories. Very early on, when we knew what we wanted to do, by bringing the comm skills into it, I said we need a name and a logo. And although I absolutely adore and could not live without the people that we are co-founders of Refugee 613, comms is not their expertise, and the names that were coming up around the table, Mike's laughing because I think he was at some of these meetings, they were not great. I'll just say they were not great. Anybody who's trying to come up with a name for something by committee will know. Yeah, that's it. So I said, no, this is not happening. So I went to a friend and said, I'd heard about Crafted Stories, guys, and I said, I need some communications expertise, I need some branding people. In a day, they gave us Refugee 613. They came up with the name, they came up with the logo. I saw them at 9 o'clock in the morning. They listened extremely well. And by 2:30 that afternoon, they sent us this and another one, and I was just like, this is it. This is it. And so that's another way to contribute. They contributed their creative skills, and I'm hugely grateful to them because I think it helped us going through the branding process, which was basically a one-on-one conversation in this case. We were very clear, we knew what we were doing, we knew we wanted to be locally based, we wanted to reflect that, we wanted to have refugee in the word, and we also did not want to have Syria in the word because we were going to always be about any refugee, not just Syrians. Although the Syrians brought us together and have dominated our work, that's starting to change. One of my favorite things is that, I think it was Grant, was sort of circling on his sketch pad, doing a circle while we were talking, and he said, I'm thinking of playing with the O and Ottawa, like a safe space to keep people. And I said, wait a second. It's actually a good thing if a refugee can go home. We don't want people to feel that they are being kept here. We want to know that if we have provided safe haven for somebody and then it's safe and they can go home, that's okay. And so he said, okay, so holding safe space. So that's when he came up with the parentheses, which is hilarious because certain generations go, I don't know what those things are about. And then certain people go, oh my God, it's a hug. So the bottom line is there are many ways to help. And not everybody is going to be working directly with refugees. That's impossible. There aren't enough refugees in Ottawa for everybody, and that was a big message we had to try to get across in the early days. But also the arrivals, the madness of the arrivals is just the beginning. For everybody, there is this long-term process of integration that really depends on us throwing doors open over and over again. Throwing doors open in your neighborhood, your community association, your sports network, your professional organization. What can CreativeMornings do to be more accessible and welcoming to creative professionals who come as refugees? What can you do in your kids' school to be more welcoming to people who have come? And maybe it's not about refugees, maybe it's about any newcomer. Because integration is a two-way street. It's not just that people come here and have to adapt and learn the language and understand our culture, etc. We need to open our eyes and our doors to them as well and make it a truly great partnership. So lots of people come up with lots of ideas on how they want to help, and it's fantastic. But you need to accept that your brilliant idea might suck. This is really hard for people, and this always leads to one of my favorite things from early on in the process with Refugee 613. So I had a conversation with a friend, and we settled on the fact that there is a dark side to goodwill. And the dark side is the desire for whatever your idea is, whatever your impulse is, to be accepted as it is. To be accepted because you thought of it, and it's great. Well, sometimes it's not actually what is needed at all. Sometimes it is inappropriate. Sometimes it is already being done by somebody else. So the reason I can be kind of harsh and say, just accept that your brilliant idea might suck, that isn't where it ends. You can adapt your idea. You can be open and humble and say, oh, okay, there's 3 organizations doing what I'm suggesting to do. Do you pack up and go home then, which some people do because that's the only thing they want to do? Or do you say, okay, well, what actually do you need? So So if you are humble, if you learn from the experts, if you sort of say, help me understand where my skill set can be of value, where my time can be of value, you're going to go much further, and you're going to truly help the person you're trying to help, not just exercise your own desires, in a sense. So be humble, because really, unless you've had a refugee experience, what do you really know about refugees? You need to listen to the experts, adapt, and course correct. Because you should always put their needs ahead of yours. So here's a professional family, the Lababidi family. They are making us all so proud. The mother is a pharmacist, the father is an engineer, they're in full-time language classes. They left Syria when her pharmacy was blown up, and they just did not feel safe anymore. They're doing great, and they have great prospects as professionals. That's really wonderful stuff. But not every refugee comes that as well equipped. They might have barriers because they don't adapt to the language as quickly, they don't have the skill set to make a good living in Ottawa. They may have trauma that is holding them back as well. So what about the refugees who face an even rougher road? And this isn't very fair to this dad, because this is like the day they arrived. He could be an English speaker for all I know, but I couldn't find a picture to kind of illustrate that that idea that not everybody is going to be perfectly immaculate and posed and nice and be the good refugee, right? The successful refugee that we like to talk about. So that's one thing I want to think about is, what do we demand as a society of refugees? Do we need them to succeed, to feel it was worth it to help them? Do we need them to say how grateful they are for the chance to be in Canada? I think it's a really important question to ask ourselves. And my answer is, don't demand success. The simple act of helping ends there, in my opinion. You don't have a say in what they do when they get here. And that is really, really hard for some private sponsors to understand, because they have literally paid for people to come. And then they see them, for example, one of my favorite things is, the family we sponsor, the mother gives her kids juice all the time. Okay. Yeah, I'm not big on juice for my kids either, but is there something you can do about that? That's their choice. They are parenting. That's what you want them to do. You can maybe explain the barrels of juice, but you can't stop. And we laugh, but this is real, and this is one of the flaws of private sponsorship right now, is that private sponsors have some boundary issues. Not all of them. Are there any private sponsors in this room? One. A lot of private sponsors come to us, and they're wrestling with this. They went and spent their money on X, and we don't want them to. You can only do what you can. It's like, I hate to use this analogy in a way because it sounds very paternalistic, but in a way it's like, can you control what your kids do when they're adults? No. So you can't control what a refugee does when they come. From the moment they arrive, whether they're government assisted or privately sponsored, you should be trying to help them be more independent. You should be, someone described it for me as, it's hello, welcome, and quietly stepping away. As, providing support, but not running their lives. So they might make life decisions you disagree with, but that's between them and the universe. And the gratitude piece is really interesting. I don't know if you guys saw this piece in The Guardian by this author, Dina Neer, because a person's life is never a bad investment. There are no creditors at the door, no debt to repay. Now there's just the rest of life, the stories left to create, all the messy, greedy, ordinary days that are theirs to squander. Just like our lives are ours to squander. That is the gift that you're giving when you open your door to someone in need. You're letting them come in and make a success of their life, or screw it up. You hope that you're going to support them, you hope that they're going to get the services they need, but really, your role in their survival was to open the door and throw the rope. So you don't save someone's life and then stand there on the shore waiting for them to say thanks. Of course they're grateful. But you should just be motivated, I believe, by the knowledge that you did the right thing. Do they have to perpetually thank you for being human and making the right choices? We talk about gratitude a lot. And I will say that I often receive gratitude from newly arrived refugees, but I don't expect it, and I don't demand it, and I sometimes feel a bit uncomfortable about it because my feeling is that we've done what we should do as human beings. I don't need a gold star for that. This is what happens when you don't throw the rope. This is Abdullah Kurdi, the father of Alan Kurdi. And this is what happens when you do it. So, I believe we do have a very important role to play in the lives of others and the survival of others. And it mostly has to do with taking advantage of what is right in front of us, our skill sets, our voices, and opening doors, throwing ropes. And guess what? When you do the right thing and you do it with an open heart and a humble mind, you actually do end up benefiting yourself and your community. We have seen in the past year and a half how opening doors builds communities. That's been really powerful. I saw it in action. I would sit in meetings and people, every now and then I see people post on social media something about how horrible meetings are. Well, you haven't been to some of our meetings. We've had some brutal ones, absolutely. We've also had meetings where you literally see community being built before your eyes. You see people connecting and problem solving and moving things forward, not for their own benefit, for the benefit of the greater good. And that's tremendously rewarding and empowering and inspiring. So when you throw the rope, you're actually throwing it for yourself too. But that's not why you do it. You do it for people like these little girls who used to be in a refugee camp in Jordan and are now at school here in Oklahoma. Thank you.
Yeah, so we have time for questions. Please don't be shy, it's sometimes the best part of the conversation.
I hope that wasn't too much of a downer.
So understanding that there's obviously no just like one way to help, but politically this is an issue that stretches across like all levels. Is there a level between municipal, provincial, federal that's best to focus your energy on, or is it really better just to go straight to the community agencies and help out there and avoid the whole politics thing?
It's a great question, and the answer is you have to kind of figure out what works for you. Where with your skill set and your time and your energy, are you going to be most helpful? You know, some people realize that they're going to be most helpful by writing a check. Some people may realize that they're going to be helpful by organizing others. If you feel that really the one-on-one relationship, because there's always a need for career mentors. There are several settlement agencies in Ottawa that do mentoring where they pair newcomers with I like to call them old-timers because they may be immigrants themselves, but they've been around the Canadian job market enough to be able to sort of say, okay, in my field, here's what you're going to need to succeed. And if you think about it, it's that those personal networks that probably got most of us a job at one time or another. But when you come to the country and you don't know anybody, it's really that much harder. So things like mentorship, things like language volunteering, you can do through settlement agencies. But if you have skills in organizing and rallying people, if you write to your MPs and your MPPs and tell them that refugees matter to you, that you want this effort to be sustained. Because I actually didn't use any of the data, but in a year and a half, Canada welcomed about 40,000 refugees, which is incredible given that a normal year it's sort of 12,000. However, there are 21 million refugees in the world, and the UNHCR estimates that 1.2 million of them need to be resettled now. So their lives are in peril. They are living in precarious conditions. Sometimes it's because they're literally under death threats where they are. They may have left their home country, but they're still unsafe. Or it could be, as the case with a lot of the refugees we received in Ottawa, that they have medical needs that are very high and just cannot be met in a camp. So one of the things that's really most important is educate yourself and contribute your voice. So, for example, the Canadian Council for Refugees, CCR, has a fantastic website with all kinds of advocacy material on it. If you want to know more, you can also email us at refugee613 anytime, info@refugee613.ca. And you can add your voice with, whether it's letter writing, whether it's joining a campaign. If you're interested in working on the idea of extending Ottawa's welcome to every category of refugee and to understanding what it's like to be undocumented in this city and needing support, talk to Patty right there. It's with the Sanctuary City Network, which is trying to explain to people in Ottawa exactly what it means to be vulnerable when you don't have all the eligibility that we have for health services. When you're afraid that the border services is going to come and pick you up. The Sanctuary City Network has been doing great work on that. So sorry, I don't know if I answered, but just you kind of have to do your research and figure out what's going to be right for you, given your time and your skill set. And you can always email us, and we'll be happy to help you with it.
Louisa, thanks for everything you're doing within the settlement agencies and bringing them up together. It's really amazing. What is next for What's next for Refugee 613, and what kind of help do you need, or what's in the future for you guys?
That's a good question. What's next? Well, we kept thinking we were temporary. We thought we would be sort of about a year. And then as time went on, we realized that actually the need for what we do was not diminishing. It's pivoting a little bit. It's much less about bringing people together for action, although we still do that, and way more about the communications piece, ensuring people are informed and educated on the needs and people know what's happening. So actually, we're about to hire a full-time communications person, which is extremely exciting for me. But even then, that person won't be able to do it all, so we will be relying on people with communication skills to help as volunteers. And we have enough funding, thank you to the province of Ontario, and to an anonymous donor who just wanted to help. So they're actually providing half of our operating funds right now. We're good for a year, but we're gonna need to find new funding after that for another year. And we sort of, as a project said, we're going to go for another 2 years. But as soon as we launch the new website and that's out of the way, my big focus is getting funding for the next year after that. So grant writers, anybody like that, I'd love to hear from you.
Hi, I just wanted to ask you, is there like a rule or distinction that whoever participates in the sponsorship program has to be Canadian? Because I'm not, I'm a Syrian trying to help family members. I'm still not Canadian, and till now I can't help anyone because I'm not Canadian. So is there like a rule around that? So we can.
I'm pretty sure, and Addie might be able to. It's PR, right? You have to be a permanent resident.
Yeah.
You don't have to be.
I'm still not a permanent.
Okay.
I'm still a worker.
So, yeah. To put your name down on the actual application to sponsor, you have to be a permanent resident.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean you can't organize a whole bunch of other people
So another question: if I'm one of those people, a permanent resident at that point who wants to help other people, and I don't have, let's say you need 5 people to sponsor someone. And I don't have these 5 people. Do you provide contacts so the 5 of us can meet?
You've touched on one of the biggest challenges right now. Sponsorship was the thing to do. Refugees were trendy and cool in 2015 and 2016. And that has dropped off dramatically, in part because our system is so cumbersome. When you say to people, get a group of 5 together and sponsor a refugee, fill out paperwork for 6 months, and then wait 3 for them to arrive. People go, no, that's not. So we have a very hard time now helping people people form groups. It used to be easy. We had events where we invited people like you who said, I have 2 people and I want to form a group, and they came to the events, and lots of sponsorship groups were created that way. Now it's down to a tiny trickle. But what I'm going to suggest is that you email us at info@refugee613.ca, and our project coordinator Sally can walk you through some of the steps and help you get started. We also have a sponsorship page on our website that links to resources. But right now, sponsorship has slowed down so much, and people are very frustrated about it, and that's a major policy and advocacy issue that we're working on. So I'm sorry I can't give you a better answer. I dread that question because I never have a good answer, an uplifting answer for it, except persevere. Thank you.
So thanks again for showing up this morning. It's not too easy when it's raining and 6 o'clock in the morning, so really appreciate it. Just to reiterate, all the information that Louisa talked about today, we're going to be summarizing that, getting all the facts about how you can help, everything written down in a blog post on our website, so all that information will be accessible to you. We'll make sure to share that out as well. So if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We'll connect you as best we can. And just a quick thank you, so thank you to Bridgehead as well as Whole Food for the first time, probably in a really long time, that we don't have carbs for breakfast. So that's a huge win for us. Some fresh fruit, really appreciate it. And as, of course, our major sponsor, Shopify, as well as the wonderful people at Arts Court today, who welcomed us into this great space, and look out for, obviously, their huge renovations they're working on. So we're excited to be coming back once that's all done and ready to show off. Of course, Saw Gallery for videos. On that note, we actually record, as you can tell, all our talks. So if there's any talks that you've missed or want to tune into, you can look at those on our website, as well as all the talks from Creative Mornings across the world. So there's some really interesting ones, and we also upload them onto a podcast. So if you're a big podcast fan, you can download that Creative Morning podcast, and you can hear a whole series of them from all different countries around the world. And lastly, of course, our global sponsors, can't skip on those guys. We wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for MailChimp, Wix, and Shutterstock.